Mametz Wood by Owen Shears is a fairly recent poem, but it remembers events that took place during the First World War, in particular the Battle of the Somme, which was fought between July and November 1916. And I'm starting by showing you this very peaceful, attractive image of the French countryside as it is now. That's actually the site of the Battle of the Somme. That's Mametz Wood, which, as you can see, it looks peaceful now, but over 100 years ago, it was the scene of a bloody battle where literally thousands of people died within minutes. Traditionally, we're told that the soldiers had not really been prepared for what they were about to face. They'd not been taught how to run for cover. They'd been told to walk and not run. To stay in formation, military formation, and unknown to the British soldiers, the trees here, the tree cover, was concealing lots of German machine gunners who just fired on them as they passed through this open land here, and within minutes, I think about over 4,000 people had been killed, and many thousands more had been, very, very badly imaged and subsequently died. So, not a great moment in our history. You can see there how violent and bloody it is in that depiction there of the Battle of the Somme. So today, over in France, at this place, you can see it's now farmland. And it's a fairly regular occurrence that farmers ploughing the land will still turn up fragments of human remains, bones, skulls, bits of teeth. It's not something that gives them, any great shock. They're not horrified by it. It's part of the history of that land. And when bones are uncovered, they will be treated very reverently. They'll be buried. They'll be given a military grave, even if the person who died cannot be identified. And many of the soldiers who came, many of the British soldiers were actually Welsh soldiers. They came from South Wales. They knew each other. They came from the Welsh valleys. And Owen Shears had actually come across to France to do some research into the involvement of the Welsh regiments. I'll just flick through here and just show you. That's actually a memorial, a Welsh dragon, to the Welsh soldiers who were killed. And that's actually at the Somme. And when Shears was over researching the involvement of the Welsh soldiers, accidentally a grave was uncovered. It wasn't marked, it was out in the fields, and they were either digging or ploughing or getting ready for some building, and this big trench was uncovered, and it revealed about 20 skeletons who had been buried probably fairly hastily during the battle. It was obviously important to dispose of the dead quickly for hygiene reasons. If you look closely, you can actually see that they still got their boots on. Now, this didn't sort of horrify Owen Shears. It touched him. He actually felt quite moved and privileged to be present. And you can't really see it here, but if you notice a little bit, the jaws have kind of dropped open, and to Shears, it looked as if they were singing at their discovery. Now, you may or may not know that there's a big tradition in Wales of the Welsh male voice choirs, and he sort of imagined that these men who'd lain hidden, their grave unknown for over 100 years, were almost singing at their discovery that their unknown grave had been located and they could be buried properly. So it was almost a kind of celebration. I know it seems a little bit strange to us, but it's actually quite a celebratory poem. So if we kind of go through it, I'll just talk you through what I think are the important things. So we start off, don't we? We talk about the normality of the farmers just finding these remains. For years afterwards, the farmers found them. Notice how informal the language is. I found them. It's almost conversational, isn't it? The wasted young. And that word wasted is quite an interesting word. Two meanings, really. The lives wasted, but it can also, wasted can mean wasted away, thin, undernourished. It might even be referring to the appearance of the skeletons. Turning up under their plough blades as they tended the land back into itself. That image there of the land being tended back into itself, it's almost like being returned to its rightful use as farmland. Look at how he describes the remains. A chit of bone. A chit is like can be a small thing, a little tiny piece. The china plate of a shoulder blade. The relic of a finger. The blown and broken bird's egg of a skull. It's as if the poet is saying there's nothing horrific there about these bones. They're just like items of the things, like bits of broken china or bits of bird egg, just debris, just remnants. This isn't a poem about an horrific discovery. And in fact, they look like little bits of flint, mimicked now in flint, breaking blue and white. The fields were full of sort of bits of flinty rock, and the bones just look like that. They're almost indistinguishable, really. Across this field where they were told to walk, not run, towards the wood and its nesting machine guns. Interesting here, definitely the criticism here, isn't there, of the commanders who hadn't prepared their men, told them just to walk, didn't prepare them to run for cover. There's definitely a criticism there. Notice this word here, the nesting machine guns, that description there. Nesting should be something comfortable, cosy, protective, but here it's something horrific. There's a real sort of contrast here. And even now the earth stands sentinel, reaching back into itself for reminders of what happened, like a wound working a foreign body to the surface of the skin. A sentinel is like standing guard. It's as if the earth is personified here. The land is personified. It's somebody watching. It's watching history unfold. You know, it saw the battle 100 years ago. It saw the destruction and the burial of the men. It's as if the earth has been waiting for their rediscovery. There's almost a sense of inevitability as well, that it was always going to, that these bodies would eventually come back to the surface. That's similarly there, like a wound working a foreign body to the surface of the skin. If you have got an injury, you know, if you badly cut your leg open and get bits of grit in it, the body is very good at getting that grit out. It will just work its way out eventually. Things that shouldn't be there are eventually expelled by the body. And it's as if the earth knows that these men have not had maybe a proper dignified burial, and it's eventually bringing their remains to the surface so that they can be treated more reverently. So he describes here, doesn't he, how the discovery of the bodies took place. This morning, 20 men buried in one long grave, a broken mosaic of bone linked arm in arm. Their skeletons paused mid-dance macabre. I'll just show you an image there. That's what a dance macabre is. There's another image just here. Okay, the dance macabre means literally the dance of death, and it was a medieval image that was often used to warn people, you know, hundreds of years ago, that in the middle of life, death was always around. They should think carefully about how they lived their lives, because no matter how much they enjoy their dancing, their drinking, their singing, their celebration, no matter how lovely the clothes that they've got are, death could be waiting for them. They should be thinking of the next life. Another little image there. And I think that image there just was what Owen Shears, the poet, thought of when he saw these men here. Let's go back to the poem. Their skeletons pause mid-dance macabre. That's what he thought of. Interesting, the metaphor here, a broken mosaic. A mosaic is one of those pictures made from lots of little different coloured tiles. He talks about the boots that outlasted them. Clearly, you know, they were given decent quality uniform. And here he talks about the jaws having fallen open. And this I mentioned earlier about making it look as if they're singing. as if the notes they had sung have only now, with this unearthing, slipped from their absent tongues. It's as if the men are celebrating their discovery. They're no longer lost to their descendants. Just a quick comment as well. You'll see it's set out in small stanzas, irregular, and maybe he's trying to reflect, I don't know, the little fragments of bone. The poem's normally set out in a single column, a straight line, and perhaps that also represents the bodies lined up in that shallow grave.